Nigel Floyd of Time Out praised it as mindless entertainment of the highest order. Karen James of the New York Times said it was much funnier than most comedies until it turns vile instead of just stupid. And Jay Boyer of the Orlando Sentinel raved, "It's amazing how quickly an explosion, a ripped out throat, or even 4 bangs in a row can make other problems seem insignificant." On this episode of Ruined Childhoods, we determine the fate of Roadhouse.
Sequel. Reboot. Which one will it be?
The Ruined Childhoods Podcast.
Greetings, Starfighters. It's the Ruined Childhoods Podcast, back from summer vacation.
Yeah, very much literally for you. You were just in Europe, gallivanting.
And gallivant I did. Gallivanted, I traipsed, I sauntered throughout the south of Spain. Actually, really not too much throughout the south of Spain, just in the Cartagena, Alicante, La Manga area. Had a lovely time with family and friends.
Wonderful. I didn't go anywhere.
You didn't go anywhere?
No.
But,
before we get into this too much, I need to share with our wonderful listeners something that happened today. So,
what happened?
So at work, so I work for Portland Art Museum, and we have a sister organization called the Northwest Film Center that hosts a lot of different film festivals, such as the Portland International Film Festival, and they are also hosting this one film festival this coming weekend. I'm trying to think of when I'm releasing. So by the time this episode comes out, it will already have happened. And it's a festival. It's just a 4-night thing where they show movies on a rooftop in downtown Portland called the Top Down Rooftop Festival, or Top Down Rooftop Film Series, something like that. And I don't think that there's any particular reason why certain movies are necessarily chosen. This year, the movies that are being shown are the Taika Waititi film Boy, the classic Laura, the other classic Wayne's World. You see that there's a theme of there being no real theme. And then also a movie, and then a movie starring our personal, I don't know if favorite's necessarily the word, but somebody who we admire a lot, Catherine Mary Stewart.
I would consider her one of the leading ladies of Ruined Childhoods.
Ruined Childhoods. And she is in this movie called Night of the Comet that we're also showing as part of this series. And I'm at work. Part of my job, as of recently, has become doing graphic design for the museum and the film center. And I'm designing a sign that's going up for zombie face painting to go up to while Night of the Comet is playing, because it's a zombie movie where all of the adults turn into zombies and teenagers are basically left to take care of business. And as I'm working on this poster for a movie that I've never seen and don't even know if I ever really heard of before, Dan texts me telling me about a screening of Night of the Comet. We've never talked about this movie before.
Neither of us have seen it.
Ever. It's never come up.
No, never. Until
I needed to share that with everybody. What's up?
And I'll share, I didn't really go into detail as we were texting earlier, but this actually had come up. I had seen it a couple of weeks ago that it was happening on, or that it was going to be happening, but I was in Europe without an international data plan, folks. So really, I mean, yeah, first world problems. So I wasn't doing a whole lot. And besides, I was on vacation. I wasn't doing a whole ton of texting, emailing, so on and so forth. I went on a Facebook and Twitter fast, I guess you could call it.
How does that feel? Does that feel good?
Yeah. Absolutely.
Nothing has changed in the world. You didn't miss anything.
No. Yeah, absolutely. And, I'm not like, no, it's banished. They've just been like banished from the phone. And I think I've logged into Facebook once a week. And today was the first day I logged into Twitter in, I don't know, 3-4 weeks. But anyway, at some point during one of those Facebook logins, I happened to see that old friend of mine who I knew we did some theater together, and I'll give him a shout out, Jason Romas. And he, I believe, owns Rock Bar in New York City on Christopher Street, 185 cool. Christopher Street, New York. And I know Jason is a horror.
We'll invoice him for that plug right there.
Oh yeah, absolutely. They seem to be doing great because they host a lot of screenings of whether it's the, American Horror Story season premiere or finale, or I think they did something with Scream Queens when that was debuted. Gotcha. But he's been getting some pretty like cool guests for these. And when they screened Night of the Comet recently, Catherine Mary Stewart was there in person, and Jason posted there was a picture posted of him with Ms. Stewart, and she looks fantastic. Not to just, all I saw was the picture, but as has aged very gracefully. I don't know why I'm commenting on this. I'm sorry. I just, you could consider her a crush from a young age. Between Last Starfighter and Weekend at Bernie's, and
right.
So it's great to see her looking healthy, I guess. We see so many of these stars whose careers didn't quite take off the way that others have, and a lot of them have seen better days, but it looks like Catherine Mary Stewart is doing great, and hopefully we'll get to see her back on the big screen sometime soon.
You can see her on the big screen if you go see Night of the Comet on a rooftop in Portland.
And how soon is that? That's happening. It's after everyone else will be hearing this.
Exactly. Yeah. But so
it's been a few weeks.
So we should definitely talk about what we all came here to talk about, and that's movie reboots, prequels, sequels, remakes, etc.
Yes.
You have, okay. Yes, you're just agreeing with me.
A lot to
we have
talk
a lot to catch up on since we took a few weeks off, and the most recent episode that came out was recorded before a lot of stuff happened. We didn't do any new stuff intentionally because it would be so outdated. We did post a few things on our Instagram about reboot news. We have where do we even begin? Little Mermaid?
Actually, before we get into the news, I want to get to a reboot that is currently in theaters in the United States, but in Europe it is on Netflix. So what is it? I had the pleasure, I will call it the pleasure of watching Shaft, the most recent Shaft.
No way.
With Jesse T. Usher, Samuel L. Jackson, Richard Roundtree, and I figured I'd give my 2 cents because, that's kind of what we do here.
Sure.
And it's the Shaft, the original Shaft, which I believe came out in 1971, had several sequels. Our friends over at the Trilogy podcast have gone into depth about that, but has also now had, I guess, 2 sequels that are reboots. Kind of, because
right.
both. So in 2000, John Singleton, the late great John Singleton, directed Samuel L. Jackson as the nephew. I'm doing finger quotes. You can't see as I say nephew, because that comes into play in Shaft 2019. The nephew of the original John Shaft, Richard Roundtree, who cameos in both films. And so Samuel L. And I really enjoyed that one. For those of you whose memory of it might be a bit hazy, Christian Bale played kind of the bad guy in it, kind of a rich kid,
Nice,
kind of a Donald Trump Jr. type who gets away with murder, and Shaft quits the police force and goes on this mission to kind of get him, while
New
also
Shaft.
dealing Shaft. Samuel L. Jackson.
Samuel L.
Shaft.
Jackson.
Yeah. So Samuel L. Jackson, who, I mean, God, I feel like this applies to so many roles, but it's kind of like one of those, man, he was born to play this role. Like, after watching the most recent one, I was like, he could just improvise a Shaft movie. I'm certain. Like, I'm certain that, like, the scripts have everybody else's lines, and then it just says Samuel L. Jackson says whatever Samuel L. Jackson wants to say.
Something shafty.
Yeah. And like, it's your duty to please that booty. That one comes back in the new one, which they try. That was the one thing about the original Shaft, was they tried to like or not the original Shaft, but the first Samuel L. Jackson Shaft was like trying to get those catchphrases in. But a lot of fun. Jeffrey Wright plays the like drug kingpin Peoples Hernandez, and Jeffrey Wright just goes to town with it. He's awesome. It was a fun movie. I remember Toni Collette is in it. She plays a witness that that Shaft is. So definitely worth checking out for those who haven't seen it. Now the new Shaft is entertaining. Samuel L. Jackson kind of makes it work. They tried to kind of build on the Shaft from 2000, except that it like there's just a few things that don't quite make sense. Like, apparently all these years Shaft had John Shaft, Samuel L. Jackson,
The second Shaft.
Yes, the Shaft the second. And so apparently there's this like other drug kingpin that he's been like trying to hunt down since the 80s. When it doesn't seem like he was on the police force, according to the flashback that they have. But then they also show during the opening credits, they show things that they show like the Shaft timeline, and they have Shaft quitting the police force in 2001, which is interesting because the movie came out in 2000, and then when he quits the police force, it's like a flashback. So like timeline wise, that could have even been 1999. But there's no explanation as to why neither his son, who would have been, according to their timeline, 11 in the year 2000, no mention of him whatsoever in that movie, even though they make it clear, like, he sends him a birthday gift every year. And really no mention of, like, they at least didn't, like, I wish they would have at least taken this new drug dealer and he would have said, like, I nailed his number one guy, Peoples Hernandez, but I could never get him. Not even, no connection. And on top of that, there are some, like, there's a lot of these like mocking references to 2019 culture, but it's like a dark, damn millennials, when John Shaft Jr., Jesse T. Usher plays, he's like crossing the street and he's looking at something on his phone, and millennials, and there's all that. There's that kind of, it's kind of similar to Live Free or Die Hard, the like Bruce Willis, Justin Long exchanges, except they were a little more timely then, and now it's old, and there are a couple like homophobic lines. There's one line in there that was kind of like, it's this FBI chief talking about his like basically like a 7-year-old kid being transgender, and he's talking about it like it's a pain in the ass. And it's one little line, it flies by. I don't think most people even remember it, but I think being sensitive to that is I just kind of found myself saying, why do these lines need to be in here? Oh, they don't. So
Right.
That said, so I mean, that said, I was able to enjoy the movie despite the kind of
problems.
weak script. Yeah, despite its problems. What is it supposed to be? It's Samuel L. Jackson saying his, throwing around, saying motherfucker. And
just playing the
doing his thing.
catchphrase game. Yeah.
All right.
We just talked a lot about Shaft, and we have a lot to get through.
I don't know that we'll talk about Shaft again, so.
Okay. Little Mermaid.
And that was your minute of Shaft. Okay, now the Little Mermaid.
That was way longer than a minute, Dan.
Yeah.
So, for anybody who has not been paying attention, lots of controversy over the live-action Little Mermaid remake, casting Halle Bailey, who is a young black woman, to play the role of Ariel. A lot of people all of a sudden very adamant that mermaids need to be white. That's really problematic.
Yeah. Wow. A lot of, a lot of really racist childhoods being ruined.
Yeah. So we're going to go ahead and take a firm stance here on ruined childhoods and say, that's totally good. Let's let that happen.
I mean, first of all, why a live action Little Mermaid remake? Like, why there are creative people at Disney who can come up with original ideas. And I think some of these live action remakes, like Mulan, the upcoming Mulan, I feel like
looks pretty badass.
Honestly, and it looks like there's a reason for it. Like that there's a great story there that wasn't entirely told initially. And I think it's actually their chance to remake and improve upon what the 90s Mulan and this live action Mulan. Yeah, it looks pretty badass.
Yeah, and I haven't yet seen the Lion King live action in quotes remake, but I hear it's really good, and I would love to see it just to see how it all comes together. And it's got such a strong cast that I'd really like to, I don't know, just enjoy. And that one is one where I'm just like, sure, absolutely.
I'm interested. I listened to the music today. Just like not the score, not anything new, just the original songs. The Lion King for me is hard to beat. The original, the 1994 Lion King, for me, it's my favorite like animated movie, like children's animated movie, my favorite of the Disney animated movies.
Yeah, well, when it came out, it was like, whoa, they took animation to another level here.
Yeah, which honestly they were doing with I think they started that with Beauty and the Beast, where they took animation to another level. I think technically with on the animation side of things, they pushed it even further with Aladdin. And then The Lion King
I completely forgot that there's a new live action Aladdin. I completely forgot about it.
There's, we were on this trip, and our friends Lara and Kenrick and their son Louis they're Disney fanatics, and so we were talking about we were actually having this conversation about the kind of some of the critiques about the Lion King live action is that you lose some of the emotional expression of the characters. And I mean, I'll have to see it for myself to determine that. But, you know, we were kind of talking about like, all right, well, which ones call for live action and which ones don't? Like, which ones, like the new Mulan, I don't know if it'll have all the music in it. So which ones call for to be the musical adaptation? And it's what worries me about The Little Mermaid is, I mean, I think about Under the Sea. I think about that, and it's so exhilarating when you watch it in the animated movie, and it's great, and you've got all the fish underwater playing instruments. What are there just going to be like real fish with little plastic trumpets? Like, I mean,
Well, I mean, little plastic trumpets floating around in the ocean, you know, brings up some other issues.
Yes, yeah, exactly. So, yeah, no, the live action Little Mermaid won't be environmentally friendly, but, you know.
Well, I mean, yeah, if there's plastic floating around in the ocean.
Disney is better. We all know that, like, Disney has more of a budget, but I'm trying to think of, like, what is it going to look like? Is it just going to be like a real crab that is dancing and singing?
We'll find out when the trailer drops, I guess.
I guess so. But I mean, they're doing a live action Lady and the Tramp. That one's actually coming out, I think, this year.
I mean, I'm of two minds about it, where it's part of me is just like, why do they need to be doing it? And the other part of me is just like, why not? You know, it's... I
mean, they're doubling down on as many of their movies as they can. Like, I think maybe Hunchback would be a good one to do. I think you have... if I remember correctly, Steven Schwartz did the music for that, and you'll have Wicked hitting movie theaters in the next couple of years, so double down on that.
So I guess we can move on from the Disney pseudo live action remakes. There's a couple other things that we mentioned on our Instagram. There's
007.
There's 007. I wish we would have thought about this when we were talking about 007, but the new 007, is it confirmed or is it like
that it's Lashana
a maybe
Lynch
situation? Is it confirmed?
So she's listed in the cast, and what I've read about the plot is that it's it looks like also Christoph Waltz is back as Blofeld, at least according to what IMDb has. So the little bit that I read or have heard is that Daniel Craig is retired, and he's living in Jamaica, and he is called out of retirement, I'm assuming because it's Blofeld. And so if you have Blofeld returning as a villain, if not the villain, then it makes sense to bring him back, and that I guess he works with the new Agent 007, who probably will not be. I guess it'll establish whether or not James Bond is a code name, or whether that code name is now just retired. So
I'm excited to find out, and I think it's a really smart move.
And I believe the first American director of a Bond movie.
Oh, who's going to be directing it?
It is Carrie, Fukunaga, the
who
creator,
did True Detective, and
yeah. So
he's great.
I'm optimistic about that. Another a trailer that I saw that I'll just comment on briefly. I'm not sure if you've seen it. The Jay and Silent Bob Reboot trailer.
I haven't seen the trailer. No, does it look good?
For nostalgia purposes, and like remembering like Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back was a lot of fun, and seeing Jason Mewes,
right,
who I always enjoyed in in that role. What I saw was funny, and they, it's like Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back. They bring in all the players, Matt Damon, Ben Affleck,
Right.
They Chris Rock. I think like you have like characters from Dogma.
Right.
You have all of the. If you think about it, Kevin Smith was really the one to start cinematic universes with the Esque-universe.
Yeah, right. One thing that I wanted to touch upon is another trailer that I saw was for The Kingsman. The Kingsman. It's not like Kingsman.
The prequel to Kingsman.
Yeah. And I saw, I saw the title of it and thought, oh, it's a Kingsman prequel. And you're watching it and you're just like, I don't think that's what this is, until there's like a reveal of like, yes, this is what that is. That's at least how I felt the trailer went.
I think the font on the poster kind of gives it away.
Well, it did, but the feel of the trailer was not indicative of the style of the other movies. So I was kind of just like,
Matthew Vaughn.
Huh?
It's Matthew Vaughn. He's back, so that's really cool.
I'm
excited.
I'm looking forward to it. I enjoyed the first one. The second one is a little wacky, but still enjoyable.
There's some I don't even want to comment, but some of the stuff in that is just, it's so ridiculous. It's great.
And one thing I just want to touch upon, this is not a reboot, prequel, sequel, whatever, but the trailer for Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood came out, and I just wanted to mention it because there is a line in the trailer. Have you seen the trailer?
I haven't watched it yet, no.
Okay, so the plot of the movie is that there's somebody who is going to be writing an article about Mr. Rogers, about Fred Rogers, and he's like spending time with him, and they have this, close relationship, and the writers, who's played by Matthew Rhys,
right? Yeah.
Yeah,
from
who's
The Americans.
Fantastic. So good. Love him on The Americans. But I guess he goes back to his wife or girlfriend, and she's like, please don't ruin my childhood. And I was like, what? Gotta bring that one up.
Gonna have to. John, did you see the trailer for Top Gun 2?
I did.
What'd you
Top
think?
Gun Maverick.
Top Gun Maverick, yeah.
I am going to watch it and enjoy it because I like Tom Cruise, and I mean, I love the work that he does with Christopher McQuarrie on the Mission Impossible movies. So what could be so bad?
You've got Joseph Kosinski of Tron Legacy, which I really enjoyed Tron Legacy. It looks like the style, though, is kind of trying to keep to Tony Scott's style. Like some of the shots looked very similar to the original Top Gun. The music, of course, helped. I'm a bit skeptical about some of the plot that kind of was just like, man. We'll find out. Yeah. And then I'm hoping maybe we'll get a, Days of Thunder 2 trickle.
Yeah, right. So before we actually start talking about Roadhouse, there's one more thing I want to bring up, and that is the announcement for the new Blade with Mahershala Ali. Yeah.
And that news was what finally prompted me, that and the fact that I was on a plane for 10 hours to watch Green Book. So. Oh, yeah. Because I wasn't that familiar with his work, and I haven't seen Moonlight. So.
You haven't seen Moonlight? It's so good.
Yeah, it's you
should have watched that instead of Green Book.
No, I don't think it was available on this flight. And I was just like, I kind of didn't want to be that, I don't know. I feel like when I watch that movie, like, it's emotional. It really seems kind of emotionally raw. Like, I got that from the trailer. So yeah. I know that's one that I need to be, very much ready for. But after watching that movie and thinking about him as Blade, I'm kind of psyched. I'm kind of interested to see what he does. I feel like it'll be a different take than Wesley Snipes, but still like a really solid a different but a really good Blade. I'm wondering, as this is part of the Marvel, is this, I guess, phase 4?
I think, well, I read somewhere today that it might actually be phase 5. I don't know what that necessarily means.
So I guess what I'm curious about is this going to be like PG-13 Blade? Is this going to be kind of...
I guess we'll find out.
I mean, yeah, I guess tonally you do it differently. It's hard for me to imagine a non-R-rated Blade. I guess because the violence and the gore was such a focus of the first two. Although I think Blade Trinity might have been PG-13.
I think that you might be right about that.
It was the weakest of the trilogy, but
so I'm just looking forward to seeing what they do with that. That's all.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Roadhouse.
Let's indeed talk about Roadhouse. Yeah.
Roadhouse begins as essentially a movie version of Bar Rescue, and then slowly, over the course of 2 hours, turns into Banana Town.
Oh,
it's like,
my God.
At a certain point, you're just like, wait a second, am I watching a different movie right now? Yeah.
I gotta say, it does start off like the pace. They know Rowdy Harrington, the director of Roadhouse, knew what kind of movie he was there to make, and he made that kind of movie. It's got Bigfoot the monster truck in it.
Yes.
And it's got what I thought was funny, John, was how we had just been talking about MacGruber right before we talked about Roadhouse, and I don't know about you, but I completely forgot that Roadhouse featured throat ripping. Throat ripping,
very much so.
But I thought like Roadhouse, it definitely starts. It starts with a fight and Patrick Swayze like in khakis and just like sewing up his own wounds, and it starts off with, and these fights are like ridiculous. It's so absurd, like these fights that start over nothing or over the most absurd things ever. And but just Patrick Swayze's like totally cool.
Yeah. So essentially, we really first see, Patrick Swayze is working at this bar that is functioning great. It's like TGI Fridays in its prime, people dancing, everybody's happy. And there is this bar owner who is there to essentially, to go and hire him to go save his bar, which is just like disgusting. People are beating each other up every single night. The staff is corrupt. Yeah.
Pretty much anything bad that could be happening in a bar, short of like a meth lab running out of the back, is happening in this bar. And he wants his bar to be, I guess the Applebee's, John, to your TGI Fridays.
I think that he's like planning to sell it, but in order to actually sell it, he needs to get it cleaned up. And get, things working right, and people to not be essentially killing each other every single day. So, Dalton is Patrick Swayze's character. He's just like this mysterious character. I still don't understand his automobile ownership situation where like he drives home before he leaves and gives his car to some guy and then buys another car to drive to the new bar and then buys another car. Like, I'm very confused by the car situation here.
I think I can partially clear that up. So
Okay.
he's got the Mercedes,
I think so.
New York, he's got like this. It's a Mercedes or is it a BMW? It's been a few weeks. Anyway, it's really nice. It's clean. It's hardly ever used. He keeps it all covered up. It's got New York plates, which he's I pretty clearly not in New York at any point in this movie. So not even upstate New York, but because this guy is coming from Kansas to recruit him,
right?
So Dalton. So I think that's just Dalton's like that's his car. He's an interesting. He's got this like kind of this Zen philosophy of like I'm gonna live in a barn and I really don't need conveniences. But he smokes a ton and has this really snazzy sports car. Which they don't necessarily explain much about it except that I guess he owns this really nice car that he loves to drive long distances. But every town he goes to, his car is going to get jacked up by the drunks he throws out.
So they're essentially disposable, only to serve the purpose of like making it through his trip there. Okay, that makes sense to me. Got it. On board.
He needs a way to get from... Yeah, he has the nice car for long distances, and then he gets whatever used car that he of course is going to fix up. And it's just for him to get from whatever barn he's staying in to whatever bar he's cleaning. And he does go by cleaner. He's not a bouncer. He's a cleaner.
He's a cooler.
Oh, cooler. Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cooler.
Cooler is the person who kind of, I guess, fixes up the bouncing situation and oversees that and
keeps things from getting mostly keeps the bouncers from making problems worse. Yeah. And keeps problems from escalating to the point where the violence happens inside the bar.
Yeah. So what he doesn't know he's getting himself into is the fact that there's Jackie Treehorn, Ben Gazzara is here, and he runs this town. He essentially, I guess everybody is in debt to him. His lackeys drive Bigfoot, the monster truck.
He's kind of like this Midwestern mafioso who like all the local business owners pay him so that their places don't get trashed.
Yeah.
And I guess he pays off all the police.
Right. Yeah. So, and also he has, I think it's his nephew works at the bar and is stealing money from the register essentially. Yeah. And also his Ben Gazzara's character, I'm trying to remember what his name was.
Brad Wesley.
Brad Wesley. He is a big game hunter on the side, and I think that he was married to Doc, Kelly Lynch's character. Is that right?
No, his son wanted to marry her.
His son wanted to marry her. I was a little fuzzy on exactly what that situation was. But what's also interesting is that Brad Wesley's compound is directly across the lake from the barn where Dalton is staying. And it's like, this town is that small that it's just right across the lake. All right, whatever.
Well, also, I love there's like the impression that it's like this huge compound. And meanwhile, I'm thinking like, that's kind of out in like the middle of Kansas, like not really near a major city. Does that go for like 10,000? Could I get the Brad Wesley complex for 10 grand?
Pretty much. I mean, it basically his next door neighbor is just some farmer.
Yeah. It's the guy who like, Dalton lives in his barn and like, I don't know what he pays him, but like he's not paying a whole lot to live in that barn across the river from Brad Wesley's complex.
Yeah, I think I think he was like, it's gonna be $100 a month. Can you swing it? It was like something really low. Yeah. Before we get much further, I've already mentioned that the monster truck Bigfoot is prominent in this movie. I do want to point out that Bigfoot has made other film and television appearances, such as Police Academy 6, City Under Siege, and also a movie we talked about in the last episode because of butt cheeks, but Tango and Cash.
Oh, yeah. Which, all right, I got a connection back. Mm-hmm. I'm going to loop us back in. Patrick Swayze was not able to be in Tango and Cash because of an injury sustained on Roadhouse.
Yeah.
Which then enabled him to be in Ghost.
Right. Which, as we all know, was a really smart move.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. So it was Tango and Cash, and then there was another movie that he was going to be in, and ended up not doing because of the injury. Oh man, shoot. All right, I'll get back to you on that.
Well, whatever.
Yeah.
To really talk more about the plot of this movie can get really, really confusing because it's just absolute insanity. But essentially, he ends up saving the town and like killing all of the bad guys. Oh, he also has a dark history that involves this rumor that he confirms to be true, where he, I guess, lost his temper and ripped somebody's throat out.
Well, it wasn't that he lost his temper. It was that he, so one of his many contradictions, in addition to being like very zen and very intelligent, he apparently also just, I guess is kind of a man whore. And I guess he went home with this woman, or he was like sleeping with this woman, and she never told him that she was married. And then her husband came in, and her husband had a gun, I guess had a gun or a knife or something. And like he attacked. So Patrick Swayze Dalton just went into like throat rip mode on instinct.
Yeah. That's right.
And by the way, the other movie that Patrick Swayze had to pass on due to that injury, Predator 2.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Again, think he made all the right choices.
I mean, it's interesting because Danny Glover had to pass on Dirty Dancing because of an injury sustained on Lethal Weapon. I'm kidding.
Is that true?
No.
Oh, I was like, yeah, that'd be
Danny
really weird.
No, Danny Glover was supposed to play Johnny in Dirty Dancing.
He could have played a different character.
I've had the time of my life, but I'm getting too old for this shit.
Okay, moving on. So
enough said.
Roadhouse. And we should also talk about Sam Elliott, who is Dalton's, I guess, mentor.
His mentor, yeah.
Yeah, his mentor, who then comes to kind of help him with this bar situation, and he was kind of like, the whole thing was like, it's the same bar, different town situation. Mm-hmm. But what they didn't expect was for this Brad Wesley situation to get really out of hand, which ultimately results in Sam Elliott's character getting killed. And Sam Elliott, this is much earlier in his career, clearly, and he's just like this young stud. Just saying. Sam Elliott. Sam,
I was watching, I didn't see the whole thing, but I was watching a little bit of his new movie, The Man Who Killed Hitler and Then the Bigfoot.
Right.
Sam Elliott.
The monster truck Bigfoot?
Like I said, I didn't get to that part. But
you only got to Hitler.
It's hard to beat that. Sam Elliott has aged maybe 5 years in the last 35 years. Like, I remember him in Mask, and the only thing that looks different about Sam Elliott from Mask until, let's say, The Big Lebowski is a haircut.
Right.
So, kudos to you, Sam Elliott.
For real. So, and then there's The Kelly Lynch character, she's a doctor, the ER doctor who, you know, ends up in a relationship with Dalton. And anyway, there's really not much more to say about Roadhouse. It does have a sequel.
Yeah, well, it was originally supposed to have a sequel with Patrick Swayze,
Right.
though the sequel is it stars. Oh,
The sequel
What's his name
stars Jonathan Skeech.
Jonathan Skeech from he's
Skeech.
in That Thing You Do.
Oh, that's the guy from That Thing You Do.
Yeah,
Totally.
but not Tom Everett Scott. And
Right.
yeah, he was
It's
also in
the lead singer.
Yeah, he was also in Hush with Gwyneth Paltrow and Jessica Lange.
So, and then in Roadhouse 2, Last Call, you've also got Jake Busey as Wild Bill. Just reading the... Oh, wait a second. Corey Hart?
Corey Hart of I Wear My Sunglasses at Night. Corey Hart.
Yeah, I believe so. I don't know if there are any other Corey Harts out there in...
Did he take over for
in Hollywood?
Jeff Healey?
Let's see.
Jeff Healey of the Jeff Healey Band plays. He's the.
I would have to imagine he's
plays
the
the house
blind
band.
guitar player. Yeah, who's like longtime buddies with Dalton.
They've
yeah,
worked in
he's-
the same places before. Yeah.
Right. So yeah, he plays Chubby DaCosta. So have to imagine so.
All right. Yeah.
So this
Oh.
movie exists, and that's all I can say about it. It's so
I have to cite my
Jonathan
favorite.
Skeech plays Shane. Sorry, he plays Shane Tanner, who is the son. He's Dalton's son, and he's a DEA agent, and yeah. Anyway,
Yeah. I
Whatever.
do have to. There was a line. There's one line when I was watching Roadhouse that I said I have to write this down, and it's at that point where the movie is really like the banana peel is coming off. We are going full bananas here, and we've already dropped an F-bomb or two on the episode, so it's when Patrick Swayze is fighting that one super henchman who gets him in a chokehold and then whispers in his ear, "I used to fuck guys like you in prison."
oh yeah, that was really bizarre.
Yeah.
There's also when they're in the bar owner's office and they're kind of giving him a hard time for the first time. One guy calls another guy chicken dick, and I was like, "That's hilarious. Where did that come from?"
Really some great lines. But anyway, let's move on to our purpose here.
Yeah. So,
What you gonna do, John?
well, okay. Well, are we factoring in Roadhouse 2 Last Call?
No.
I'm assuming
No.
you haven't seen it. I haven't seen it.
We're gonna say Roadhouse 2 Last Call is not considered canon.
Right. Okay. So what I would do is I would either do a prequel, and I'd probably cast some Hemsworth as a younger Dalton. Pick your Hemsworth, doesn't really matter. And I would maybe go into that story where he rips his first throat out. Or I would do a sequel that plays on the legend of Dalton and the time when he ripped an entire small town Kansas mafia's throat out. And it's called Throat Rip Academy. And it's a new form of martial art based on Dalton's method of, being a cooler at a bar.
Just his kind of that's his to use a Last Starfighter term, his death blossom, if you will. His
Yeah,
weapon
sure.
of last resort is the throat rip.
What do you do after you rip somebody's throat out? You wait. That's it. You're done.
You move on. You don't have to wait for anything.
Yeah.
You
The
go
wait's
on
not
to the
long.
next throat that needs ripping.
Pretty much.
You rip away.
Yeah. When he ripped that first throat out, because I might have seen Roadhouse before, but the details were fuzzy.
Yeah,
When I
this is-
watched it again, I
I
was
should
just
clarify.
like,
This is
What's
not
up?
this is not necessarily a movie that we grew up watching. I am sure I
No.
saw it on HBO or VHS somewhere in the late 80s, early 90s.
Yeah.
But didn't necessarily watch it all the time.
When he rips his first throat out, I was just like, oh, it's this kind of movie now? Okay. I'm like, all right, here we go.
right.
And then it's just that for the next 20 minutes. And it's like, this is a different movie. I'm watching a different movie now.
Oh, well, I kind of felt that way when Bigfoot trampled the car dealership.
The car dealership, right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
when everyone just gathered and watched as Bigfoot just ran over all the cars and smashed through the car dealership.
But the thing is, I feel like that was an even entirely different movie sandwiched in between these two other movies. Because that movie was essentially just like, we've got this monster truck.
Yeah.
Let's play monster trucks for like 10 minutes.
Yeah,
And they
we've
do
got
that.
this monster truck, and we've got all these cars that we can crush with it, and this building, all this glass that we can crash through. So, why not?
Oh, it was also in Police Academy 2, their first assignment.
Was it now?
I wonder if that's referenced in Police Academy 6, where it's just like, hey, this is the same car from all those years ago. I don't think that there's
while-
that line in that movie, but
While there is definitely a sense of continuity throughout the Police Academy series, I don't think that Bigfoot was taken into account.
yeah. It was also in Charlie's Angels Full Throttle.
Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe. Oh, wow. So Bigfoot has certainly had a lengthy career in film.
Well, its first movie was 1981 with Take This Job and Shove It. It's the main character's personal truck, according to Wikipedia.
right.
It makes an appearance in Ready Player One.
Yeah.
And then
That's
on TV, it had its own series, Bigfoot and the Muscle Machines, and which is an animated series.
I remember
And
that.
and then let's see, there's a Discovery Kids TV series called Bigfoot Presents Meteor and the Mighty Monster Trucks.
Okay. Well, that's good.
Yeah.
So I was thinking about it, and then when I was in Spain, and we were driving.
We get it. You went to Spain. I'm kidding. Go on.
Well, that trip to Spain was what inspired my idea for a Spanish language remake of Roadhouse set in Mexico. I would love to see
Road Casa.
I think it would just be like, I would love to see Robert Rodriguez if he could
Okay.
if he could go like full like Desperado Once Upon a Time in Mexico.
Yeah. Those
Then
are cool movies.
I would love to see, like, you could bring in like a Damien Behir or
Yeah.
maybe like an Andy Garcia as Brad Wesley. Your Dalton could be a Gail Garcia Bernal, Diego
Yeah.
Boneta, Oscar Isaac, if you will. And as taking the place of Sam Elliott, you could have Antonio Banderas. You could go Danny Trejo
Right.
with that.
So my other thought for this was really to just do like a re-release, but treat it as if it's a movie like Rocky Horror Picture Show. And like, you know, I don't know if there's a way to encourage audience participation.
Do a Roadhouse
I-
Roadshow.
You know, because those types of things are things that happen naturally, and they don't happen often. It's really Rocky Horror. You have The Room. I don't know if there's a way to force that, but I think it should be encouraged because that movie really deserves to be viewed in that type of environment.
I want to say that, okay, so here's what's been done. Roadhouse the musical,
That's not surprising.
and I want to say it was called Roadhouse the musical based on the film Roadhouse starring Patrick Swayze. Like, that's the full title.
I did hear about this, yeah. And wait, was there something with mullet wigs? Or am I making that up?
Probably.
Where like they give out mullet wigs or something like that? I don't know. I thought I heard something about that.
I'm looking at on Brown Paper Tickets, and they're not mentioning that. But if this was ever done, this sounds like a let's see, in 2003. Off Broadway musical. That makes sense. I would be surprised if it wasn't in the New York Fringe Festival. And yeah, but anyway, so there's that. Let's see. It was a campy comedy. Oh yeah, its full title is Roadhouse, the stage version of the cinema classic that starred Patrick Swayze, except this one stars Tamac from the 80s cult classic The Last Dragon, wearing a blonde mullet wig. Okay.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Also, I do want to encourage people to listen to another podcast episode for a podcast called Sequel Rights. My friend Josh was on an episode they did about Roadhouse. So,
okay, nice.
If you do want to listen to people talk about the sequel, Roadhouse Last Call, go there. We're not talking about it.
Yeah. But there were some other directors who I was thinking, all right, if you were going to remake Roadhouse, I mean, yeah, there's a lot you'd have to change, and the Hemsworth name definitely came up in my casting. Like, I would be interesting to see like a Hemsworth Kurt Russell combo, like Kurt Russell taking the Sam Elliott role, or Keanu.
Yeah,
I feel like Keanu Reeves is kind of maybe too old for Dalton now, but
for sure, yeah.
But like 10, 15 years ago, even I could have seen that. But you could put him in the. I don't know if the Sam Elliott role really fits him as well. Ryan Gosling is Dalton.
Yeah, kind of like the quiet, cool type of situation. Also, for talking directors, I'd love to see like a Harmony Korine Roadhouse. Wouldn't that be weird?
Roadhouse? Yeah. See, I was like Stephen Chow. Who made one of my favorite like action movies, Kung Fu Hustle.
Right. That'd be fun.
Yeah, Stephen Chow. You mentioned Taika Waititi before.
Taika Waititi.
I apologize. I think he's a director who kind of has that sense for humor and action. So whoever's been doing the John Wick movies,
Yeah, I mean, look, nothing's ever going to happen with Roadhouse beyond what's probably happened.
Oh, Kurt Sutter. I'd be interested to see a Kurt Sutter.
What has Kurt Sutter done?
Sons of Anarchy and the Mayans.
Okay.
Or just Mayans, actually. Yeah. So, like, I think those are directors who would get the tone of it, both the humor and the action. I'm sure there are.
Has there ever been a TV series about a cooler? Somebody who goes from like bar, like I know there's Bar Rescue, but like
I don't think so, but I should point out that according to IMDb, it was going to be remade with Nick Cassavetes directing Ronda Rousey, but
oh yeah, I did hear about that.
I assume because of Ronda Rousey's WWE contract, it sounds like the timeline worked out that took that maybe was one of the reasons why this fell apart. But Ronda Rousey, right. I'd be down for that. She kicks ass.
Yeah, I mean, she's held her own in some movies and in smaller roles.
She was in a Fast and the Furious.
Sure, she didn't really have many lines, and I think that worked in her favor.
She kicked ass.
That's what she was there to do, and she did it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, Dan, let's talk about what we're going to talk about on the next episode.
What we talk
Ruined
about
Childhoods.
when we're talking about, we didn't even touch on the Look Who's Talking reboot. We'll save that.
We don't have to.
Well, I guess we've said enough. So next time we will be revisiting the 1985 John Candy comedy Summer Rental to go to, as kind of a partner to Summer School, which was, and both films were directed by Carl Reiner.
Yeah. I know that we're clearly going to talk a lot about Summer Rental in the next episode, but it's a movie that I know I've seen and have like vague memories of certain aspects of it, and I'm really looking forward to revisiting it. Because it's been a really long time.
It had been out of my mind and off my radar, but then with the recent passing of Rip Torn,
oh yeah,
I was reminded of his role in Summer Rental, and therefore reminded of Summer Rental, which one of those movies I remember enjoying and I have fond memories of watching. So a summer classic.
Well, it'll be a lot of fun to revisit. It looks like it's streaming on one app that I've never heard of before. So we'll see how that
2019. Goes. If you can find a movie, there's a will, there's a way.
If anybody wants to chat with us a little bit, we are ruinchildhoodspod@gmail.com. Just a heads up, we're going to be recording some episodes while we are on a week-long summer vacation in Hawaii coming up pretty soon.
Yes.
And we're going to have some special guests from our families. So look out.
Oh, yeah. It's going
to be interesting.
As the kids say, it's going to be lit.
It's going to be a big experiment. We're going to see how this goes.
Yeah, it could be. I mean, really, I feel like if the experiment is a failure, it will still result in an entertaining show.
Yeah, and if anybody also wants to recommend movies that you think we should cover while we are in Hawaii, let us know.
Yeah. It'll be our first time actually recording in person together.
I know, which is wild. Yeah. So for anybody who doesn't know this, Dan lives in Seattle. I live in Portland. We're in the Pacific Northwest. I don't know why we're not doing more Pacific Northwest themes for. Maybe we should do
Harry and the
something like
Hendersons.
that coming up. You know, Goonies. There's so many.
John, our very first episode was partially set in Portland.
That's true. Short Circuit.
So,
yeah,
we have not avoided the Pacific Northwest. We have perhaps neglected
we haven't.
it.
But it'd be fun to do a cluster,
a little Pacific. All right. So hey, listen, if you've got favorites, your Pacific Northwest favorites, whether it be a Harry and the Hendersons or a Singles, let us know. What are your thoughts? What do you want to hear?
Dan, Harry and the Hendersons, how many Bigfoot movies are we going to talk about on this episode? Good journey, everybody.
On that note, good journey.